Hi, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Jason Loewith. I'm the artistic director here with Olney Theater Center. Oh my gosh, welcome to opening night of The Beauty and the Beast. I almost forgot the name of the show. That's how tired we are. Thanks very much for being here. I'm joined on stage by Marcia Milgrom Dodge, our director. And behind the scenes, this is the return, the sort of valiant pre-opening return of our behind the scenes programs, which we used to do in the before times, and we are now going to continue to do in the after times. As you know, these are events that are free for members, and they provide an opportunity for getting a little bit of context behind the scenes, how we created the shows, interesting tidbits about the themes of the play, opportunities to hear from playwrights when it's new plays, and so on. So we're very glad that you've joined us for this. How many of you, if anybody here, has seen Beauty and the Beast yet? Has anybody seen it? Oh, other than staff. Thank you very much. So you're gonna have all the good questions, I bet. And how many of you are seeing it this evening? Super, welcome. Well, great to have you. It is my distinct honor and pleasure to introduce Marcia Milgrom Dodge to you. You probably know her from, you probably came, how many of you saw Once actually here back in 2018? Great, so you know Marcia directed that show for us and choreographed that show for us. This one, she only directed.
Yeah, I had a lot of help. I had a lot of help on this one. Yeah.
Marcia, as I think you know, has a long and illustrious career. She's done work on dark and complex plays from the Loman Family Picnic, complex musicals like Evita, perhaps none as complex as Beauty and the Beast, and to the delightfully simple, at least to your eyes, like Smokey Joe's or Ain't Misbehavin' or Seussical. Talk about not simple at all. Of course, you know about her Helen Hayes Award-winning production of Ragtime, which in 2009 moved to Broadway and earned her a Tony nomination. So boy, we're very lucky to have you back.
Thank you. Thank you, great to be here.
Thank you. I'm gonna start actually with something off the script. You just said to me outside, this is the night that you feel completely useless as a director. So how do you feel about, tell us why you feel so useless.
Because I have to hand the show over. I have to stop giving notes. I have to stop, if anyone's Jewish, potchkiing with it and sort of, you know, messing around anymore with it. I have to give ownership to the company, which includes the performers and the entire backstage and front of house crew who run the show. And it's complicated. We do the show in one set, but it has magical phases, and there are 20 plus people in the show. During previews, we had an understudy go on and a swing go on for their track. So we have been working in overdrive to get the show finished, and tonight is what I call the most useless night for a director, is opening night, because if something goes wrong, I can't do anything about it. And I grew up, you know, collaborating with directors who had volatile tempers and would scream, and I would be like, why are you doing that? That is not going to solve the problem. So I sit patiently and let the, you know, kinks work themselves out if there are any. We did 2 wonderful shows over the weekend, and we're ready. And we did 2 yesterday, so we're ready, and we need you, and we need you to take us to the next step, which is empowering this company with telling the story in this way and celebrating that effort and talking about it, hopefully, and getting everybody to come see us.
You all have probably heard me say this quote from Paula Vogel, Pulitzer-winning playwright, Baltimore native. Paula says that she, as the playwright, writes the script. The director, the designers, and the production crew, the stage managers, and the actors all write the production, and then each one of you writes your own play. And I have a feeling with this production, you're all gonna each write, you might think you know what Beauty and the Beast is. I think you're each gonna write your own play after you see the show. And for you, you've already written your own play. I also tend to ask, when we do behind the scenes events, for our holiday musicals in particular, or any musical we do, I like to ask if anybody has an idea of how many people are employed just in this room while the show is going on, not counting all the people in the box office, the ushers, the people running the concessions. How many people do you think it takes to make a show like this happen, a musical? Anybody shout out a number?
15.
25, 15, 40.
100.
You said, all right, now you went too far. 40 is too low, and 100 is not far off. You've got, as we said, 20 actors on stage. You have 9 musicians in the pit, so that's up to 29. You've got 6 people working backstage. You've got 4 people in the booth with a stage manager. You have 2 spotlight operators as well. Actually, I think it's 7 backstage for this show, now that I think about it. So that's, anybody do good math? 42? So whoever said 40 was very close. Thank you, Paul, well done. It's a huge, huge effort. And Marcia, as the director, from the moment she starts conceiving the show, first starts working alone, then adding choreographer, then adding designers, then into casting director and casting the show. And then the technical rehearsal period, which began a week and a half ago, when we moved from the rehearsal room where we'll all be later, many of us will be later, to when we move from the rehearsal room here and we add all the lights and the sound and the costumes and the props that aren't yet there in the set. She's suddenly in charge of this giant symphony, and then has to be a control freak every moment. And as somebody who's director, you are asked for your opinion about the littlest thing, right? You know, like, do you want the soup spoon or the teaspoon that's not going to be seen by anybody, but you have to have an opinion. And now you cannot have any more opinions.
Now I get to keep my big mouth shut, is what it is. Yeah, it's, you know, we had a benefit because of the pandemic. I think we're the only ones that can say that, because we conceived the show in 2019, early 2020, and then when we were shut down, we got more time to work on it. So we had a lot of preparation. So coming into this process, I was ready. I was like, let's go. And a lot of my company were coming back and doing their first show back. And so it was a beautiful navigation of understanding and community and prioritizing and clocking our behavior and making sure that my bossiness and sort of demands were not coming from a place of ego, but of wanting to do an excellent show. And so it's been a beautiful journey, and we were really lucky. I feel really lucky that Jason said yes to a lot of these ideas, because Beauty and the Beast needed this. I think, needed to be looked at today with fresh eyes. They don't call me Four Eyes for nothing. And to really go in there and understand what beauty means, what acceptance means, what toxic masculinity means, and all of the things, buzzes that are around in our culture right now that are story points in this Disney musical. So it's just been incredible.
Yeah, as usual, you're hitting on the nose a lot of the things that I want to ask you further about and go deeper about. So everybody has a sense of Beauty and the Beast. Everybody knows what Beauty and the Beast, thinks they know what Beauty and the Beast is. And when I asked Marcia if she'd be interested in directing the show, Marcia said quite rightly, well, you know, I'm not going to just give you your generic Beauty and the Beast that you could see anywhere. You wanted to take a deep dive, as you tend to do. I mean, you did it even with Once, which was not what you would consider yet a classic, and you gave us a Once that was unlike any Once that had been done before. So and I remember I was so impressed because we had this conversation, God, this was so long ago and I can't believe I remember it. It was sometime in 2019, and I was in the car driving home from here. And you were talking to me about the script of the play, and I was like, I don't know that I've yet reread the script of Beauty and the Beast, but you were interrogating it. So So talk to us about what you were finding that you wanted to really dig into.
Well, one of the big things was, why is the Beast, and who doesn't know the story of Beauty and the Beast? Does anybody not know it? Okay, so you're all familiar. It starts with an old woman who comes to a prince, to a castle, offers a rose to a prince, and the prince is unkind and sends the old woman away, not knowing that the old woman was the enchantress and was going to put the spell on the castle because of the prince's bad behavior. So I guess because I'm a mom, I was like, why is that prince such a little shit? I'm sorry, but it was like, why is he turning on this old woman who's come with a gesture of goodwill? And I started to dig in there, and I thought, maybe something happened to this boy. Maybe, and where are his parents? We go into this castle, and it's Lumiere the candelabra, and Cogsworth the clock, and Mrs. Potts the teapot. Where is this boy's parents? So I created a kind of deep dive backstory and thought maybe this boy had something wrong, of something that we could see that made him mad and angry at the world. And so it really started with this idea of casting Evan Ruggiero as the Beast, because I had sort of been keeping an eye on him, and he's a amputee, and he's a tap dancer. And I'm a tap dancer. I am, sort of, and still. But I started watching his career, and I thought, could he sing the Beast? And so it all started with that idea that this young prince had something that caused him to be mad at the world. Nobody understood, and so we developed our storytelling based on the casting of the Beast, and then the casting of Belle. And for me, it can't be a size 2 petite white woman anymore. It can't be. That can't be our definition of beauty. Beauty is an all-encompassing concept, and it's only in the eye of the beholder, so they say, and it's only skin deep, so they say. And so I wanted to expand the definition of beauty and give someone who I think is a treasure in this community an opportunity to play an ingenue, and that was Jade Jones. So once we sort of landed on Jade and Evan, everything made sense. And that snuck in a little more kind of other stuff in there that I hope you'll find when you see it. Because something rang to me when Belle sings the opening number, Belle. She says, we moved to this French provincial town. So I thought, where did you move from? Who are you? Who's your mom? What's your dad like? And he's in the story. So we developed some other backstory that feeds into the idea of Belle and her father Maurice being a bit outside of the community.
So why is backstory important? You do sneak in some backstory that we actually do see, but it is true that in rehearsal you spend time talking about backstory with your actors, about their characters that we never know about. And we're never going to know about the specific backstory that they might have created. So why is that important as an actor, for an actor?
Because I believe that theater is all about relationships. And so it's relationships to another human on stage. It's also a relationship to a prop or a piece of scenery, to a staircase, to a chandelier. Everything that moves within the storytelling is developed based on relationships. So if you have two characters meeting for the first time, they have to be coming in with some baggage. There has to be something that preceded that entrance. And so that's the exciting, what we call table work, where when we have the opportunity to sit around a table for 3 or 4 days and simply talk about the play and talk about the relationships and why this song is written in 3/4 time and why this other song is written in 4/4 time. So all of that dramaturgy, which is the fancy word for do your homework, is what we do and what I love to do, and research and understand how to build relationships. So if you believe the characters in their situation and they ring true to you, then we did our work. And it isn't necessarily important that you know exactly what the details of that backstory are, but simply that they're full-bodied characters who are living truthfully under these imaginary circumstances. And that's the supreme goal of our work, I think.
And you do a similar amount of work in dramaturgy and backstory and homework with your designers. So can you talk a little bit about how you and Narelle Sissons, who's our set designer, ended up with this remarkable space that we're in, beyond the fact that I said, unfortunately, only theater's resources were not such that you can have 17 sets moving on and off, which was a constraint that you had to deal with.
Yeah, that was a beautiful opportunity. I always look at obstacles as opportunities. So with Narelle and I, we've been collaborating since 1994 or 5. So we've done a number of shows together. And what Narelle brings to the table is a completely different brain. It is a non-literal brain. She's not somebody that does a lot of these kinds of classic musicals. So I always like to go to her when I want to tackle something and smuggle in some deeper meaning to it. So when we began our conversations, and my MO has now sort of come about that I like to do things on a unit set. I like actor-driven storytelling. So I said to Narelle, I think we need to do this in a decayed castle. And so it was like, the spell has been there. I knew I was going to have the prince be about 10 years old at the start of the story. And there is a piece of text that says we've been under the spell for 10 years. And I thought, the staff hasn't been able to work on, do their work on maintenance and upkeep, so the castle is going to be a bit of a mess. And then we're going to find the light within it by telling the story, by exploiting all the different locations with gestures and scenic ideas that will feel hopefully surprising and then inevitable. Meaning, I want the audience to sort of go, how'd they do that? And then, of course, that's what they had to do. That's perfect, right? Like Fred Astaire dancing with a hat rack, right? It's the same thing. You first look at him and say, how could he do that? And then he dances for 3 minutes and you're completely hooked. So that's what I look for with Narelle, and that's what we try to find. Little gestures, little grace notes, little ideas amidst a bigger idea that can take us to all the different locations. I mean, if you looked at this, just the Disney version, there's massive literal scenery. And to me, that's not letting me in. That's not inviting me as an audience member to use my imagination. So I challenge all of you to fill in those blanks with your imagination and your relationships and your backstories, because I think everybody will connect to particular characters in very particular ways.
I think it's such a great example of really rigorous dramaturgy, and the kind of dramaturgy that I so respect and ask and hope our directors and their teams will do. I mean, when you talk about it, how many of you saw Beauty and the Beast on Broadway? Anybody? A couple. All right. Indeed, there is nothing of. It is not a decayed castle. It is an enchanted castle on Broadway. But it's true. How could they do the work if they're a clock? You can't do it. So I mean, that kind of.
I don't know how much you can see, but there's cobwebs. There's a bird cage over there. It's falling apart. Wait until Colin Bill's lights are on it, and it'll be extraordinary. There's like cobwebs all over the chandelier. I mean, it's gorgeous. There's some beauty in it. It's sort of amazing that even in this decay, that there's beauty within it. So that's sort of a metaphor, I guess.
Sort of a metaphor. If you saw Carmen here, you saw Narelle's work. That was the last time Narelle designed a set for us here. And actually also a big empty room, kind of like this.
And actually, with once, when Michael Schweikart, who's a longtime collaborator of mine, I actually didn't say this to him, but I was sending him vibrations to channel Narelle, to be more poetic, to be less literal, and Michael rose to the challenge for once, rose to the challenge beautifully. And you know, certain designers bring certain aesthetics and tools to the collaboration, and I'm always looking for the out of the box choice, not simply to be different, but to find the what's essential about the show in I guess that's just it. Find out what's essential and depict those essential items.
And I think you do that beautifully, and it's one of the ways you walk this really, you very elegantly walk the fine line between giving folks what they expect walking into Disney's Beauty and the Beast, and giving them an opportunity to exercise their imagination. So do you want to talk just a little bit more, whether it's in terms of design or production, direction, whatever, about how you walk that line?
I mean, my heart is in the slapstick comedy of the show as well. So on some level, this is all sort of poetic and highfalutin in a way, or sophisticated, but there's very low comedy in the show. And so with my choreographer, Josh Walden, who is my protege, who I had been working with since he was a student at NYU, and we have been working together ever since the 90s as well. We're devoted to entertainment, but with everybody on stage in pursuit of an objective. So when you get to the Be Our Guest number, which is spectacular, the reason they're putting on this show for Belle is because they want her to stay and turn them into humans again. So if Belle stays, falls in love with the Beast, and restores him back to the prince, then they are restored. So everybody has purpose, everybody has a need, and so we try to infuse the choreography with the storytelling that makes them essential to the story, and not simply a dancing napkin. You know what I mean? So everybody's in service to pleasing Belle and getting her to want to stay. And then the Gaston number was challenging because traditionally Gaston is in a tavern and there's antlers all over the place. Well, I'm not putting antlers on my stage after what happened at the Capitol. I'm not gonna do it. So we found a new way to dive into Gaston and his sidekick, LeFou, and give them a contemporary, toxic, masculine, with a little sports arena, and allow that story to be told and his journey to be truthful. But we backed off very deliberately from exploiting anything that would conjure something really uncomfortable for our audience today. So that's the other thing I do, is I work very hard to make sure that this story is being told because it has to be told today. And if there isn't a context for that, then I'm gonna dig in there and find a way to make sure there is one. So there is an antler lyric. We did not change a word, but I think you'll appreciate that we don't have antlers all over the stage.
I know our props department appreciates that you don't have antlers all over the stage. Talk to us a little bit more, or talk to me a little bit more, because I'm so curious about how you worked with Josh. As I think you all know, Marcia, began and first rose to fame as a choreographer herself. This is just too complex a show for her to direct and choreograph at the same time, and so much going on. But how do you, as somebody whose heart, starts beating in the world of choreography, how do you give over that control? I mean, do the two of you sit there with a step chart and be like, all right, no, I don't want you to make that step happen there?
No, because it's not step-driven, it's story-driven. And so Josh and I had tons of conversations about who everybody was, what they want, why they're doing what they do, and because we've worked together and we sort of share a brain, it's easy to hand it over to Josh. I also took on a few of the numbers myself, and what I hope is that you'll come away not really knowing who did what. I mean, you'll know Josh did the big ass numbers because those are huge and they have huge dance breaks, but you'll also know that it's of the same physical score is what we call our work together, from even the staging on the scenes to the staging in a duet to a staging in a solo to a staging in a full company number. We call that our physical score, just the way that actors learn the text and then learn the music, and we teach them the physical behavior of the show. In directing scenes, it's a little bit more flexible, and I sort of have a little more give and take with the actors. With musical numbers, Josh has to prepare and does prepare a full-scale plan, and then based on how it's going, and if the choreography is serving the story, or if it's not, then he'll change something. But we work really on a super trust system and give each other notes, and if I'm staging something, I'm always like, is that okay? Is that okay? Is that what I... And the same with he to me. So I think you'll find that it's a very cohesive world and filled with, you know, some zany... There were days in rehearsal where he turned to me and goes, it's bonkers, and I would be like, it's good bonkers, it's good. So there's some really fun stuff and really kind of over-the-top dancing, and but everybody's on a mission. Everybody has an intention, everybody wants something, and everybody is pursuing it with a lot of joy.
I just want to ask you about the Be Our Guest number a little bit more. Is that the most complex number you've ever directed, perhaps?
Yeah, and the thing is, Josh did a storyboard for that number back in early 2020. And he figured out a way to make it look like there's about 50 people on stage. Because we had the script and the score and the lyrics tell us we need dancing napkins, dancing cutlery, a menu, a champagne glass. I mean, there's a litany of inanimate objects in that, and Josh was really meticulous and worked very closely with Ivania Stack, our costume designer, who did amazing work to create quick changes. There'll be moments where you're like, more people are coming. Where did they come from? It's our little mighty group of 10. We have an ensemble of 10 performers, and we think we need to get a backstage cam, because the B-roll, which we shot last night, which is the video, and it'll be edited for broadcast, you know, to be on the website and stuff, so you'll see clips of what goes on here. But I think they should put a camera back there during Be Our Guest to simply see what is going on back there. That's why this mighty group of 10, this mighty group of 7 on the crew, which includes wardrobe and hair and props, it's crazy. But hopefully out here it won't look nuts. It'll be good nuts.
Yes, a good bunkers. So after you watch Be Our Guest, so allow yourself to be swept away by Be Our Guest, and then at intermission, turn to whoever you're sitting with and be like, all right, how many people do you really think that was? Because that was more than 10 people. Great. I want to switch gears before we open it up to any questions that folks have. I want to switch gears to being a freelancer and the pandemic. I mean, you were probably one of the busiest freelance directors in the country. When the pandemic happened, how many shows did you see evaporate into thin air?
one really evaporated, one absolutely went away. The others were all postponed. And so it was about 6, I think. But thankfully you hung on, and so we kept working. I got a new job, believe it or not, which is what I'm going to next, which is Jersey Boys down at the Maltz Jupiter Theater in Florida in December, which is very nice. Although their theater is not finished, so we were doing it in a baseball field. So if you're down in Florida, come and see us. And then a production of Evita at the Drury Lane Theater in Chicago that got postponed and shifted to a different date, and then a production of And the World Goes Round, which I did before I came here, which got shifted, and the Muni in St. Louis, which is a 11,000 seat outdoor theater in Forest Park.
11,000
seats, and so I did the first show of the season, Smokey Joe's Cafe, and I set it in Gaslight Square. If anyone knows St. Louis, it was a very historical music area, so we kind of gave that show to them to welcome them back from being away. So I was busy in various stages of pre-production, and then this really cool thing kind of came at me, which was a pitch for Disney to do a Muppets musical on one of their ships. So I actually was Zooming with Kermit and Piggy and Swedish chef, who sang It's a Small World in his Swedish bizarre language. And it was a mashup of Disney and Muppets. And it went from like March to November, so it was something that kept me, I was so happy. I was like, oh, I get to see Kermit today. So that sort of was we did a very meta thing with it. We did a Zoom pitch so that Kermit actually did the pitch to the Disney suits. And I think they're still confused about what we just did. But Piggy was playing Belle, and Piggy was playing singing Let It Go and all this crazy stuff. So that was kind of wild.
It's great that you were so busy. I mean, a lot of freelancers were not as lucky as that. Were you at any point ever concerned you weren't ever coming back to work?
Yeah. And I turned 65 in 2020. So I thought, oh, is this a sign? Is this like I should retire now?
How old?
65.
Who did?
And now I'm 66.
Don't believe it. But whatever, go ahead. Lie to me on stage, that's fine.
So I thought, okay, maybe I'm done, you know? Maybe it's time. And obviously there's a shift in our culture and what people are presenting on stage and how we're representing underrepresented artists. And I am 66 and I'm white, but I'm still in a kind of underrepresented category of being a woman, which is a sad thing to say, but so I'm holding on and I have more stories to tell, and I hope that I can keep doing it. So I'll just keep doing what I do.
So say we all.
Yeah, I mean, the way I sort of stalked Jason. I said, I want to work at your theater, and here's what I've done, and I love your community, and I've worked at Arena and Kennedy Center. I know the local artists. I want to work here. I'm a salesman's daughter, so I will always put my best foot forward, and make my case. And thankfully, Jason didn't get turned off by that. He thought it was kind of charming.
I did. I still have your long list. I mean, you know, sometimes you get pitched, somebody pitches you, they're like, hey, Jason, can I talk to you? I'm thinking about maybe Fiddler on the Roof. And Marcia had like a 7-page list of potential projects with each.
I'll do whatever you want me to do.
No, it was totally great. So how did sort of working from home during the pandemic change your thoughts as a director? Your work as a director? Did it just, or maybe it just made you return to the stage with greater zest and need to tell stories? I don't know. Tony, my husband's here. Did I change a lot? I don't think so.
I'm still always going to be ferocious and try to inspire my team to be as ferocious in telling stories in new ways. And I've been posting a lot on social media. The pictures of our Belle and Beast have been out. Playbill wanted the exclusive on it, which we gave them. And I'm hoping that I'll get the opportunity to dig into some more of these classics and be able to give them new context for the world we're living in today. So I'm not gonna stop. I mean, I'm still doing what I'm doing. I'm a little nervous because it all sort of stops in February. All the stuff that I got caught up on from last year will be completed by the early February. And so now I'm starting to try to, you know, get more jobs after that. So we'll see. I hope that my relationships with theaters like Olney and other theaters around the country will have me back. And it's a tricky life being a freelancer. I can't simply leave tonight and then call Jason tomorrow and say, so what am I doing next year? That's kind of not the way it works.
But she probably will.
Well,
you'll give me a week?
Yeah, I'll give you a week. But because you have to be careful. You don't want to overstep and you want to be invited back, but as a freelancer, you do know that it's not a guarantee. And so that's, I think, the hardest thing, but I've been doing it for 40 years. And that's what I tell my students, that's what I tell young directors who call me and say, how do we do what you do? I simply try to keep doing it. That's all I can do. And put my, you know, be my best self, do my best work, and hope that it's good and it sells tickets and I get invited back. But, you know, if I get too comfy, just when I get too comfy thinking, oh, I've been going there every season for 6 years, all of a sudden, there's not a show for me next season. There's a lot of people that do what we do. And, you know, it's very attractive to leaders to bring in new, exciting ideas. So I have to constantly keep doing as good a work as I can do. That's all I can do, and hope that I get invited back.
Not that you have to pitch right here on the stage, but seriously though, you did mention a real interest in taking some deep dives into more classics. What kind of classics do you think of when that you'd really like to smuggle in some meaning for, that you really investigate? Is there anything any kinds of work that's on your mind?
Not like right at the ready. I mean, I generally like to be offered something where I think there's no way in hell I could do this. You know what I mean? And part of what I do is, you know, sometimes have to wait to be offered because I don't necessarily get the opportunity to pitch. So I do want to work on some new work, and hint, hint, with my husband, who's written some stuff. We're actually writing something together now that we hope will get produced in a season way somewhere. But I want to, you know, when I get a job like Beauty and the Beast, and I know that it has a certain expectation as a non-replica director, I would say yes, and then freak out, and then figure out a way to do it. So there's a, you know, there's certain musicals I think now that maybe need a little shelf life, and we need to get away from. Yeah. I'm not so sure I would tackle Carousel today. I would have a really hard time doing that. But if somebody said, would you do Carousel? I'd probably go, okay, I'm gonna figure this out. I'm gonna figure out, how do you say, can a slap be a kiss? Yeah. I don't know how to do that. Yep. I'd have to figure that out, but it would be an amazing challenge.
I think it is time. I mean, the entire Rodgers and Hammerstein canon, which is so remarkable and still holds such power over audiences and artists, is due for a real strong reinvestigation. So there's going to be a very interesting, I think, series of productions of those shows and Lerner and Lowe's shows that'll be coming out in the next decade or so. hopefully to give them a place in the canon, because I'm a little afraid they're going to be the Showboat, go the way of Showboat and all those other shows. I want to give us a little bit of time if you have any questions for Marcia, either about her career, about what directing is, what choreography is, or about Beauty and the Beast, or questions for me as well is also fine. Hal Gordon, row 3.
Would you like to take this particular production elsewhere? And if so, how would you go about doing that, both in getting invited somewhere and what are the logistics of bringing the production?
The question is, would you like to take this production elsewhere? And if so, how do you do that? What are the logistics of doing it? And I'm interested to know the answer to it.
How big's your checkbook? It's money. Regional theaters, like Olney Theater Center, have seasons planned sometimes 3 to 5 years in advance, right? Maybe given the glitch that we just went through, that we're going through, we may not have they may not be that far out. But regional theaters are generally locked into a season and a calendar. Sure, do I want this story to reach a wider audience? Of course, I would love that. Commercially, is there a place for it in New York? I don't know, maybe, but it would require very brave producers with big bank accounts to say, let's take this.
I do think it's not, given the radically inclusive nature of this production, and the way it expands the notion of beauty and ability, I do think that there would be people who would be interested in it. I think immediately, like this would be a great show. You know what you could do? In the big theater at New World Stages. I think if it's high enough, tall enough, if it's tall enough, would be a great place for this size.
Or we do it in an old bank. You know what I mean? And do it in one of those
like
old...
where Guardo was.
Yeah.
Square.
Or I remember Anne Bogart did marathon dancing in an old, beautiful... Remember that, Tony? It was I don't know what it was. It was on 23rd Street, some old building. I would do that. I would go into some abandoned space and build our abandoned castle in there or something. Like Natasha Pierre did before they moved to Broadway or something.
Where we would run where we would run into problems would be the commercial interests. Certainly Disney, the monster in the room, but any show with commercial interest behind it, all these estates and companies at this moment are so desperate for revenue because of the pandemic that they would see that us doing, this show moving to one single place would perhaps eat into their opportunity to tour the show again. As an example, I wish I was planned 3 to 5 years out at this moment, but there are so few musicals to which the rights are available to regional theaters at this moment. Examples of shows that you are not going to see at Olney Theater next year because they're not letting us do them. Les Mis is going back out on tour. Fiddler is going back out on tour. These old shows, it's really? And certainly anything that is currently running on Broadway, forget about it. Anything that is touring to the Kennedy Center through next year, forget about it, because the tour operators are hoping to increase their touring all of the following year and come back to DC. Anyway, that was a much longer answer to your question, Hal, than you asked. Other questions? Yes, Phil. Oh, and there's one in the back after that.
As you work your way around the country, do you notice different levels of talent when you go from city to city and how do you compensate for it?
Sure. The question from Phil is, working in different cities and places around the country, do you notice different levels of talent in resident communities?
Yeah, I mean, I work with people who are seasoned performers who have been doing this for almost as long as me. I work with young performers who are coming out of training programs. So various levels, and most of the major, well, DC, this area, and Chicago, I would say I do more local casting than I do, say, in Cincinnati or in Florida. Florida, we have a good percentage of local casting. So it's really a balance of the local talent pool and the roles that you need to cast that maybe you can't cast locally. So we always start locally with most of the, certainly with Olney and with other theaters that I work at, but the level is what we bring to it. I mean, we go through exhaustive searches on every show I do. We want to find the best people for the job, so we spend a lot of time in casting, and there's a little phrase we have that we're not really that fond of, but we say cast early, cast often. Meaning, if you cast too far out, then you find out your Mrs. Potts just got the national tour of Carolina Change, and they're not available anymore. So, you know, you cast sort of a month out, usually, but then in this situation, we cast a year and a half out, and we did a lot of replacing, because a lot of people during the pandemic took other jobs that became more lucrative, and so we lost some ensemble members, and we still had yet to cast Gaston when we were shut down. So there were, you know, I would say the level of talent varies wherever you go, but you're always going to put, what my rule is, if you're on this stage, that's where you belong. You're meant to be here. So whether you're the first choice or the fourth choice, if you got the job, that's the job. You got it, and it's yours. And so that's kind of our rule. But yeah, there's, you know, wide range.
I would say about 90% of the actors you see at Olney Theater Center are locals, folks from the DMV. When you direct some, like the Muni, for example, what percentage of a larger musical, not just
at the Muni, we usually have somewhere between 30-40 people on stage. It's an 80-foot proscenium. This is what, about a 35-foot proscenium? 40-foot proscenium, so imagine twice the size. And they have a teen ensemble and a kid ensemble, so those are local. And then they have an ensemble for the company is usually about 20. And then the principals are all usually from New York or Los Angeles. And then there are local actors in the St. Louis community that take on roles as available and that are good for them. But a lot of the company come through this teen program and then go off and have big Broadway careers, and then they come back and star in a Muni show. So it's a real cultivation of talent that way.
Outside of New York, there are, you know, Chicago, DC, to a degree Minneapolis, to a degree San Francisco, to a degree Seattle. Those are the places where there are resident communities of actors, really strong resident communities of actors. And then outside of those areas, you're often casting out of New York or Los Angeles. Somewhere in the back, I can't see, but somebody had a hand up. Yes, please.
I'm not exactly up to speed here on the story, but is there a particular century that this royalty is associated with, that the story takes place in, or is it just a nebulous?
It's kind of, we went sort of 17th century-ish. You know, with fairy tales, you get a little bit of elastic. We can sort of pull, it'll feel a little Louis, you know, French Louis. Narella would always go Louis says, so I'm not sure if she meant 16 or 17, I'm not sure.
I think that's 16, but
yeah. And then Avanya, particularly with the enchanted objects, we made the choice that they wore livery and they wore the white powder wigs, so that there was a sense of royalty in the castle, that this is definitely a community of royals and servants, obviously. And then the provincial town is a little bit more fluid, I would say, in terms of its period. It'll feel, you know, storybook-ish. I think.
Definitely look in your program, whether printed or your online program on the web. There's some good dramaturgy in there about the origins of the Beauty and the Beast fable, which goes back, goes way, way back, millennia, literally. However, the Beauty and the Beast, as we know it, its most influential predecessor of the Disney Beauty and the Beast, was written in the 1700s as a French novella. So it's not surprising that there is this sense of Louis XVI. Any last question? Yes, sir.
You may not be able to answer this question. It's probably too sensitive. But you mentioned money, Marcia. If someone were to underwrite this whole run of Beauty and the Beast, what would that price tag be?
The question was money. If somebody were to underwrite the entire cost of this production of Beauty and the Beast, what would the number be? I am happy to, Josh on our staff and Debbie, they all know. You guys can't, anybody want to guess? Shout out a number? I know you haven't seen it yet, so it's hard to know, but this is the longest running show that we do in the season, so the show runs 8 or 9 weeks, maybe. Most of our shows run 6 weeks, so there's that. Anybody want to guess?
$1 million.
$1 million? Who thinks less than $1 million? Who thinks more than $1 million? Less than $1 million. It's about, I would say, direct costs. Well, no, it's actually both. Direct costs about $650,000 to put the show on, but that doesn't include my salary, Josh's salary, Debbie's salary, any of the salaries, Emily's salary, any Weldon's salary, all of those things that are also paying for all the salaries of folks who are working on all of the shows during the year. That doesn't include the cost to run. I mean, our electric bill here at the theater is about $250,000 a year. A lot of that comes from the holiday musical. So it's $650,000 or probably like $1.5 million, depending on how you count. So thank you, it's a great question. I want to thank, is it a quick one? I don't want to say no. Give us a quick one.
I don't expect, but I think one huge benefit of the COVID times is that it allows artists to step back out of their usual routine and find very new, unexpected ways to do things. Wondering if you've seen that at all yourself or in artists that you know?
It's a great question. The pandemic gave us as artists, and I would imagine just about everybody here who had any sort of a pause in their industry or lives, an opportunity to step back and reflect. And I will brief. It's a very long answer, but I'm going to give you a very short version of it. I think all of us at Only Theater Center on staff, we went through a really long and rigorous period of soul searching about a lot of stuff. Some of it had to do with the racial reckoning that the country began to go through again last summer. Some of it had to do with working conditions and how hard we all work, the number of hours we work, for the amount of pay that we are paid, both on staff and freelancers. We did a lot of soul searching about what was important to us, about why we did what we do. One of the things that we did is we hired Shruti Mukund, who's our new Director of Community Engagement, finally putting our money where our mouth is in terms of connecting to the community. So institutionally, there have been enormous shifts. And if I can be grateful to the pandemic, I am extremely grateful to the pandemic for that, because I think that we are a stronger, more essential institution for this community and for the artists that we support and for ourselves as staff than we were before. Do you have any thoughts? I know that was a little bit institutional question, but.
That was beautiful. I learned how to do Zoom auditions and Zoom readings and Zoom. I wish I had stock in Zoom. That's what yeah.
Man, yeah.
Whoa. I didn't watch a lot of theater on my computer, but I know a lot of theater on computers was happening. I need this. I was aching to get back to this relationship of humans in a dark theater sharing this experience. So it was a placeholder for me, any of that Zooming, even with Kermit and Miss Piggy, which was fun, but it wasn't, I didn't know what I was doing half the time because I didn't have those skills and tools. I had to rely on other people to do all that, so.
Well, thank goodness we're back, and thank goodness you all are back. Thank you for joining us. We'll see many of you tonight, see many of you later. Thank you, Marcia.